26th. We're going to read Acts chapter 24, verses 1 through 16, and then we're going to do a daily devotion. Yesterday we read Acts chapter 22, 23, and 24, and we're talking about when the Jews plot to kill Paul. Okay, so this is Paul's trial before Felix. It says, 5 days later, the high priest Ananias went down to Caesarea with some elders and a lawyer named Tertullus, and they brought their charges against Paul before the governor. When Paul was called in, Tertullus presented his case before Felix. We have enjoyed a long period of peace under you, and your foresight has brought about reforms in this nation. Everywhere and in every way, most excellent Felix, we acknowledge that this profound gratitude. But in order to not weary you further, I request that you be kind enough to hear us briefly. We have found this man to be a troublemaker, stirring up riots among the Jews all over the world. He is a ringleader of the Nazarene sect, and even tried to desecrate the temple. So we seized him. By examining him yourself, you will be able to learn the truth about all the charges we are bringing against him. The other Jews joined the accusation, asserting these things were true. When the governor motioned for him to speak, Paul replied, I know that for a number of years you have been judged over this nation, so I gladly make my defense. You can easily that no more 12 days go, and I went up to Jerusalem to worship. My accusers did not find me arguing with anyone at the temple, or stirring up a crowd in the synagogues, or anywhere else in the cities, and they cannot provide you with charges they are now making against me. However, I admit that I worship God of our ancestors as a follower of the way, which they can call sect. I believe everything that is in accordance with the law and that is written in the prophets, and I have the same hope in God as these men themselves have, that there will be a resurrection of both the righteous and the wicked. So I strive always to keep my conscience clear before God and man. After an absence of several years, I came to Jerusalem to bring my people gifts for the poor and for the present offerings. I was ceremonially cleaned when they found me in the temple courts doing this. There was no crowd with me, nor was I involved with any disturbance. But there were some Jews from the province of Asia who ought to be here before you and bring charges if they have any against me, or these who are here should state that the crime they have found in me when I stood before the Sanhedrin, unless it was one thing I shouted as I stood in their presence, it is concerning the resurrection of the dead that I am on trial before you today. Then Felix, who was all acquainted with the way, adjourned the proceedings. When Lysias, the commander, comes, he said, I will decide your case. He ordered the centurion to keep Paul under guard, but to give him some freedom and permit his friends to take care of his needs. Several days later, Felix came with Drusilla, who was Jewish. He sent for Paul and listened to him as he spoke about faith in Jesus Christ. As Paul talked about righteousness, self-control, and the judgment to come, Felix was afraid and said, That's enough now. For now, you may leave. When I find it convenient, I will send for you. At the same time, he was hoping that Paul would offer him a bribe, so he sent for him frequently and talked with him. When 2 years passed, Felix succeeded by Porcius Fetus, but because Felix wanted to grant a favor to the Jews, he left Paul in prison. That was Acts chapter 24. Tomorrow we read Acts chapter 25, Paul's trials before Fetus. Fetus consults with Queen Agrippa, and Paul before Agrippa. All right, so daily devotion is 1 day in 7. You are home from work, but it's not time to sit down. Laundry, dinner, dishes, putting the kids to bed. Will it ever end? You're working your tail off on your job, but the boss wants the project completed by next week. Sure, it's Sunday, but it has to be done. Part of freeing yourself from the rat race is realizing that if you follow the work-rest cycles God has set in place, He'll often restore the time you didn't think you had, or He'll reveal that your tasks weren't as urgent as you thought. God also wants you to see if you will stop working and trust that He's a real breadwinner. That's because that's the big reason why worship is set aside for one day in 7. It's both an act of faith and an act of reverence for your ultimate provider. So if your work seems never ending, rest anyway. It will restore your soul. My soul finds rest in God. My salvation comes from Him. Truly, He is my rock and my salvation. He is my fortress. I will never be shaken. Psalm 62, 1, 2. All right, thanks so much for listening.